Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss about how to start cybersecurity in the organization. It is very important for you to know from zero to hero to how to build a cybersecurity function, cybersecurity program in the organization. Trust me, when I basically join one company as a freelancer, I have zero visibility about how to start cybersecurity in the organization. No matter I have a technical certification, I have a management certification, but it basically goes waste when you basically implement on a practical level because things are worked differently in the practical level. So I would like to thanks my my friends, my colleagues who helped me to build this particular process, like Mukul, Rahul sir, Suraj, Pralad. So these people are basically played a very important role to make me understand about how the things works in the industries, and I can use those principles to build the things. And whatever the challenges I have faced, okay, I was able to overcome those challenges and I was able to build the cybersecurity for the startups. So I thought the struggle which I face, I'm not going to, I'm going to share this experience with my future aspirants so that they can also use the same experience and build the cybersecurity in the company. So if you're new to my channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. My name is Prab Nair. For more information, you can refer my LinkedIn profile. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. So it is very important for you to understand the introduction of cybersecurity. See, what we learn in a curriculum, cybersecurity is all about maintaining a CIA of an asset. But in reality, cybersecurity is all about managing a risk. Your entire activity is surrounded with the risk. Okay, our presence in the company because we need to mitigate the risk. Okay, managing a risk. So cybersecurity is all about identification of a risk, managing of the risk, and responding to the risk. Okay, so that is the most important thing we have. See, when you're creating an information security plan for a company, when you're creating a cybersecurity program for a company, when you're initiating any kind of information security initiatives, make sure it should be aligned with your risk analysis output. Okay, if it's basically not aligned with your risk analysis output, then it cannot be aligned with your business objective. Because any kind of initiatives you want an approval, they will ask what is the reason of introducing this. Then you're giving a justification, we're introducing this particular solution because we have a possible risk in the assets. So make sure risk assessment is your driving factor in the organization. When you hire anyone, when you fire anyone, any kind of an acquisition happening, any kind of a divestitures happening, risk assessment is the most important thing. And your life is surrounded with managing risk only. Another important thing from a cybersecurity point of view, you need to understand cybersecurity is the sub-component. It's a component of information security, because information security is all about protection of different type of assets, all kind of assets, which cover your physical security and digital security, where the cybersecurity is cover your digital security. Okay, so the cybersecurity is a process by which we protect the assets from being disclosed. Okay, disclosed, altered, and destruction. So disclosed opposite is confidentiality, altered opposite is integrity, and destruction opposite is availability. So by end of the day, cybersecurity is all about maintaining a CIA or protect the asset from being disclosed, altered, and destruction from unauthorized parameter. And you as a CISO, you as an information security consultant also, your responsibility is to protect the data, because by end of the day, data is the value which is generated by the organization for the organization. And we have been appointed to protect the data. We have been appointed to protect the assets. Asset can be anything. Data is one of the type of assets, okay, which is sensitive and critical to an organization. Now, when you're talking about sensitivity is more concerned about the disclosure, and criticality is basically more about impact. Example, like you running a bank. Okay, so I join as a CISO in the company, and that company is basically running a financial services in one of the city. Now they holding a PI data. So that is basically sensitive because they have a concern if they fail to maintain the protection of PI data. Okay, and further it has a big impact, like someone hack into the server, they hack into the PI data, and they publish the entire PI data on the Reddit forum or open forum. It has a reputation impact on the bank. It has a regulatory impact on the bank. So according to that, we need to protect the data. So this is basically belong to a family of sensitivity, because make sure bank should not disclose this information to unauthorized user. Second is there will be some critical information because of which we have a business dependency. And if that information is unavailable, it has a huge impact on the websites. So as a CISO, it is very important when you're building a strategy, you need to have a clear visibility about what kind of an assets the company has. Okay, whether it is critical or whether it is basically sensitive. If it discloses, what is the impact? If it's unavailable, what is the impact? Okay, so that's the most important thing we need to understand. Let's move to the next part. Okay, so now we understood the basics of cybersecurity. Now, whenever you join any company, instead of asking about all type of reports, all type of documentation, first of all, you need to schedule the meeting with the business stakeholders. You need to schedule the meeting with all the department heads. And it is very important in this meeting, you need to measure some few things. That's a very important thing. Okay, so example like what business do they have? Now, example, when I join one startup, they are into the consulting services, they support the manufacturing units, they support the banking unit, they support some food corporations and all that. So I'm trying to understand what business do they have. My suggestion is that when you're having a meeting with the business stakeholders and all that, be like a small kid, be like a small children and understand passively what is happening. It is very important for a good CISO to have a good listening skills instead of talking skills. Okay, more you listen so you can able to react. So what business do they have? That visibility is very important. It's not about only from a vendor certification that identify the value of the data. Before identifying the value of the data, first we need to understand what business they have. Second is how are they doing business? What is the meaning? Example like, are they doing digital business? They have a digital presence. They're generating a revenue. They're generating a lead from the marketing. Okay, what kind of assets are involved by which they doing this business and how much revenue the business is generating. It is very important for you to understand the value of business. It is very important for you to understand the financial revenue of the business. So a good CISO is the one who can basically understand the financial sheet, balance sheet of a company, not in an expertise level, but at least high level. Because until unless you don't know what is the value we are intaking, we cannot decide the level of controls based on the impact. So it's very important as a good CISO, you need to have an understanding of balance sheet. Okay, if you're confused that, it's okay, you can involve any kind of a financial advisor by which you can basically get the understanding. Next, you need to understand what kind of a data they have. You can obtain the inventory of a data. In my next slide, I will show you that how to see the inventory of data. Understand where the data is reside. Okay, in how many branches, because you get a visibility in the first 4 points, what kind of a business you have, what are the presence, what are the branches, where we have resides. So based on that, you can able to understand the data level parameter. Then how do they maintain the risk over the information system? How frequently doing the risk assessment? Do they have a dedicated person who conducting risk assessment? Is the risk assessment only limited to the system level or operation level or enterprise level? So that visibility we need. And how were they able to keep the CI of an asset? CI mean confidentiality, integrity of an assets. What are the current controls they have? So it is just a high level informations we have that we need to collect and we need to measure. So what is the learning from this? So by this, we can able to determine the high valuable assets and seek the effective strategy to protect them. That is the reason of doing this meeting. Then we develop the organization understanding to manage the cybersecurity risk to the system, assets, data, and capability. Okay, we can evaluate the effectiveness of internal systems and controls, because it's very important from this business understanding. We get a visibility about what are the controls are in place. With their risk assessment report, we get a visibility about what are the current control effectiveness they have for managing a risk. Then we can able to develop the appropriate safeguard, be aware of the risk which is posed by the assets, and that visibility you will get from the senior management and from the risk owner, data owner, and develop and implement the appropriate control. So this is just a high level activity you have to conduct. Okay, so this is not a correlation with the slide. Okay, it is just a high level activity you need to perform. So as I said, after having a meeting with the business owners and all that, the next thing what we need to do is we need to obtain the asset inventory. Okay, so here you can see the asset inventory example we have. Now it is depending upon organization to organization how they basically maintain the asset inventory. So here we have an asset number, serial number, description, what is the location, assigned to whom, who is the vendor, what is the purchase date, Do we have a expected life cycle, asset and date, purchase and date, expected value of end of life? It is very important in a new modern asset classification. It is very important to define the MTTF, mean time to failure. So according to that, we can able to replace. Then we have to understand the depreciation value. Then we need to understand the depreciation monthly value, and then we need to understand the current value. See, as I said, after having a meeting with all the business owners and all that, then only we obtaining this asset inventory. Okay, because you have to conduct a risk assessment first. Whenever you join any company, after understanding a business and everything, you will prepare the questionnaire. Okay, that questionnaires is basically more like a qualitative questionnaires, qualitative risk assessment questionnaires. And to validate those questionnaires more effective, it is also very important to understand what assets we have and their asset value. And it can be include your business values and everything. I repeat again, if you join any CISO in the company, the first thing is that schedule the meeting, understand the business, take your time, prepare the questionnaire, and based on that, you can basically do the further risk assessment. Okay, so risk assessment is the first step that you do in any company when you join any company, okay, where you understand the things and everything. We also have one more example of the asset classification. Suppose this is the asset class. Definition is type of data. Asset is financial sheet. We're giving a asset ID to that. Location is India. Owner is Akash. Then asset class is application. Definition is payroll application. Asset is employee data. Asset ID is 784749. Location is India. Owner is Miss Meha. So this is how we have a meeting. Now, after collecting this owner detail and their associate details, okay, then I will basically schedule the meeting. One example I can give you. Suppose we are scheduling a meeting with the data center manager and understand, okay, how critical is the data center. I simply asked the question. So they said, okay, this data center is basically handle some more than 17 applications. As you can see in the sample asset inventories, they are supporting major applications. Okay, so I'm trying to understand, do they have appropriate controls? Yes, we have installed the suppression system, we have encryptions and everything. Then based on that, I will ask the evidence. If I fail to get an evidence, then I'll basically suggest the control. So this is how I'm passively collecting and observing data, okay, to document the risk report. Okay, so asset inventory is a very important thing when you basically initiating a risk assessment in the company. So once you have an asset inventory, what is the next thing? As I said, after identifying the assets and their inventory, you need to conduct a risk assessment. Okay, so in order to conduct the risk assessment, first you need to understand the basics of risk. So here, what is threat? Threat is a potential for harm. Ransomware is a threat. Okay, hacker is a threat because he might hack into my system. So I can give you one layman example. Like we have a hacker. Okay. And this is basically my server 1, server 2 and server 3. Okay, server 1, server 2 and server 3, and all 3 servers hold the critical data. Example. Okay, so now what happened is, there is a possibility hacker can able to hack into this server. But question is how? After discovering the vulnerability on the server. Vulnerability was weak password, unpatched system. Okay, so threat is an action, okay, that basically exploit the vulnerability. Vulnerability is called as a weakness in the assets. Okay, and then we'll basically analyze the risk. See, risk is always called as a probability of the loss. It is not a confirm, it is a probability. Okay, one thing you need to remember. So when some people look at the preceding formula for the risk, they say that a missing key component, mainly likelihood and impact. Okay, so risk is not something which is confirmed, okay, in the system. Risk is called as a likelihood. Okay, like if I don't wear helmet, okay, then what is the risk? Risk of my life. But it is not happened, right? If it's happened, then it is not a risk. It is actually a impact. So we are doing a risk assessment so that we can able to control the further impact. Okay, so risk is the probability of a loss, which means there is some uncertainties involved, some uncertainty. We are not sure. And how we basically measure the risk? We can measure the risk by threat into vulnerability into impact, or another short form is likelihood and impact. Likelihood basically mean where the threat is going to exploit the vulnerability, what is the chance of that, and if it happen, what is the impact. Example, like we have a server, there is a probability hacker is going to hack into the server, okay, by exploiting the vulnerability which is called as a weak password, and they can able to ransomware the entire, like they can able to perform the ransomware attack on the system by which they encrypt the data. So what is the impact? If this happen, the impact will be $20,000 loss. So this is something like a probability. It is not a confirm yet. We're just doing a hypothetical scenario. So according to that, we can able to control this attack by suggesting a controls. Is it clear? So that's the most important thing we need to understand. So risk is always measured by the likelihood and impact. That's a point we have. We have a two type of risk assessment. One is basically called as a qualitative risk assessment, and we have a second which is called as a quantitative. Okay, so with the help of qualitative, we prioritize the top 5 risk, and then we try to do the further level quantitative impact to identify that. Like we use some formula for the quantitative risk impact. The first formula is SLE, single loss expectancy. The formula is asset value into exposure factor. Okay, and then we need to calculate the ALE, annual loss expectancy. The formula is SLE into ARO. So one example I can give you. Let's take an example. So after having a meeting with the business owners, I identify there is a server. Okay, I discovered a weak antivirus. I discovered the weak antivirus on the server. Okay, so now what is happen is there is a hacker. Okay, hacker basically use virus, okay, ransomware and all that, and they try to attack my server. Okay, one attack on the server, okay, current value of the server is $10,000. Okay, we have this information from a business owner and all that. So we understood the server currently generating a value of $10,000. But if there is any ransomware attack happen on the server, so ransomware attack is a combination of where the hacker is basically performing a ransomware attack. So that is a threat. Okay, is an action that they're performing on the server. Okay, the impact will be the asset value reduced to $5,000. Okay, $5,000. If one attack happen, this will be the cost. So formula is SLE into, so SLE here, asset value is $10,000 and 50% will be the downgrade. So it will be coming around single loss, how much cost me? So we have a 10,000. So 20 is minus, so SLE will cost me $5,000. So single loss basically cost me $5,000. We never take a decision based on a single loss expectancy, because in that case the cost of control look very high, because right now the cost of control suppose coming is $10,000, which is already exceeding my risk impact value. So we need to calculate the ALE, annual loss expectancy, and the formula is SLE into ARO. See, when we're talking about risk, right, risk is basically calculated based on two things. One is basically your historical data, and second is basically is your predictable data. So I've discovered in last 1 year, this virus, this kind of a ransomware attack happened 7 times in a day, 7 times in a year. So here, and I'm assuming in next 6 months also same thing happen. So we have considered ARO is 7 time it happens, and SLE is basically 5,000. So overall ALE coming as a $35,000. Now makes sense to invest the 10,000 control. So we never ever take a decision based on the SLE. We take a decision based on a ALE. So when I say risk is all about likelihood and impact. So likelihood here is basically my ALE. Sorry, likelihood is basically where we have a threat into vulnerability. Okay, what is the probability of this happening? And then we basically talk about the impact. Is it clear? So that's the most important thing. So let me repeat again. We schedule the meeting with the business owners, understand the value. We perform the qualitative risk analysis where we identify this process is basically very, very critical. Okay. And then further analysis, we perform the quantitative risk analysis where we identify the asset value, we identify one attack, impact what value, and then I come up with this kind of a cost. Okay. That's the most important thing. So finally, what we're going to do is we basically create the overall parameter, which is called risk equal to, it is a universal thing. Okay. Likelihood of occurrence into cost of occurrence. And third, cost of protect. Okay. So here the cost of occurrence is basically your ALE. And then you're suggesting a cost of protection. Okay. Likelihood of occurrence, we also already got the value, but cost of occurrence here is ALE. Okay. Annual loss expectancy. If this has happened, then what is the impact? Clearing. So threat into vulnerability, if they're going to exploit, this will be my ALE. And to reduce the ALE, we follow this particular process. We also, whenever we're suggesting a control, okay, we follow one formula there, which give the value of the control. So ALE before implementing safeguard minus ALE after implementing safeguard minus annual cost of safeguard. I repeat again, ALE before safeguard, ALE after safeguard minus annual cost of safeguard. So live example is right now the ALE value coming is $35,000. Okay. After installing antivirus, the ALE after implementing safeguard, this is my probable value, which is coming around $10,000 example. Minus the annual cost of safeguard is coming around $5,000. So whatever the value we have, that is the value of the safeguard. So if we take example of the calculation, so 35,000, let me calculate. So $35,000 minus $10,000 minus $5,000. So it is coming as a $20,000. So that is a $20,000 is the value of the safeguard, which is basically generated by the safeguard for me. So all this thing will be added in the business case. Okay. So whenever you're basically going for any kind of a risk assessment, okay, whenever you're going for any kind of a data security, it is very important to know that what is the risk you want to protect. This is a highest risk and the solution is a cost effective. I repeat again, what is the risk you want to protect? There is a highest risk and the solution is a cost effective or not. So before spending any kind of a dollar amount on the budget, so you need to ask these questions, and already some data you get by doing this risk assessment. Okay. So question is how to articulate all this data. That's the most important thing that we need to understand. So this is something is a risk matrix we have created. Okay. So you can see here some example I have taken. The first column, you need to create a financial, first column, you need to document the business process, like financial data generated by the application one for Florida user. Okay. Then I have document the possible threat, which is called as a ransomware attack. And then we document the vulnerability. One thing you need to understand, you cannot able to control the threat, but what you can control is a vulnerability. Because if you're talking about a threat is basically sum of intent plus opportunity plus capability. So you cannot able to control the intent and capability, but what you can able to control the opportunity. So when you're creating a cybersecurity strategy, your strategy will be based on the vulnerability. You need to pass the vulnerability. Is it clear? That's the most important thing. And their associated impact. So if I'm able to pass this vulnerability, automatically I can able to reduce the impact. Clear? So focus on the impact of cybersecurity event, not how they happen. Clear? Is it clear? So that is a point important we have. Then we have a data center one, hosting a website and other critical applications. So we did the understanding here that, okay, system failure, system physical access, overheating, it's 7-year-old. So these are the possible threat we have. And what we have a vulnerability is absence of biometric, no maintenance of HVAC system. The impact is basically very high. Impact is basically high or medium, whatever we have based on the risk benchmark. And then we have basically suggest the controls. As I said, your controls are basically introduced to patch the vulnerability, because by patching a vulnerability, you can able to control the threats. Because one thing you need to remember, if there is no vulnerability, there is no threat. If there is a vulnerability, there is a threat. Is it clear? So once you identify risk, then we need to identify the control. So summary is that when you join as a cybersecurity officer or CISO in the company, schedule the meeting with the business team, do the risk assessment like this, and identify the possible risk and impact. Okay, and then you can basically to understand what are the current controls they have, what are the current practices they have. Okay, after doing this risk assessment, because one thing is that might be they have a control in place. Okay, or might be they don't have a control in place. So that we need to understand. And that is why we move to the next step, which is called as a cybersecurity maturity of an organization. As I said, you assess the risk, you identify the risk. Okay, and now you're in a stage to identify, do they have a controls? Okay, because it is not necessary that, okay, you have to start completely from the basics. Okay, you need to understand what they have, associate controls and procedures, and what we need to implement. So this is where we introduce the cybersecurity maturity program. Okay, so cybersecurity maturity assessment is a gap analysis and risk assessment that utilizes cybersecurity best practice. And as a good CISO, we will basically first conduct the gap assessment to understand the current state of cybersecurity in the organization. And as a cybersecurity maturity assessment, they focus on a specific controls that protect the critical assets, infrastructure, application, and data by assessing your organization defensive posture. So this is the sample we have. Okay, if you can see, I have organized the controls in a 5 section, like governance control, regulatory requirement, asset management, risk management, and physical environment security. So I will basically maintain this sheet. Okay, so this is just a sample. Like example, I want to validate they have an effective governance control or not. So at least annually, the board or appropriate board committee review and approve the cybersecurity program. Can I have evidence like email reports and everything? If I'm not, then I will select no. Cybersecurity tools and staff are requested through budgetary process. Do they follow budgetary process? I will ask for the email evidence. Do you have a formal established information security policy? Yes. But the policy is basically reviewed effectively. It is acknowledged, it is signed, that we need to check. So by this series of questionnaire, okay, I will share this questionnaire with my assurance team, existing security team, and from there I get a visibility about what current controls we have. So risk that we identify, the controls we are expecting, and from this report we get a gap. So I will mix all these details and build the information security plan. If any new control required any kind of a budget and all that, then I will prepare the business case and I give the justification of the risk. Okay, if not, if existing control can work, then I will use the existing control, amend the information security plan, and submit the information security program to the senior management for an approval. So question is, what is the parameter of building an information security program? So your information security program is cover your 6 main area: governance and policies, asset management, access control, system development maintenance, incident response, and business continuity. So these are the areas we have, which is basically based on the information security program. If you really want to know how the, I have one document which give you the visibility about risk assessment. So this is I have a spreadsheet here, which I basically use for the risk assessment. So here you can see the asset, we have a vulnerability, we have a threats, impact area, impact controls, vulnerability, threats, vulnerability threats, and overall risk assessment. So this is how we basically does the things. And if you're talking about the cybersecurity maturity assessment, let me show that also. So this is how you can able to create a cybersecurity maturity assessment, just for reference. Okay, performed, not performed, so we get the visibility. Okay, so that is the most important thing we have. So this is all from my side. If you find this video useful, do share your feedback in the comment section and let me know what is a further video you want me to make. So let me summarize again. First, you join as a company, schedule the meeting with the business owner. Then you basically get the visibility of business and asset value. And then on that, you will do the risk assessment to identify the risk, okay, probable risk, and suggested controls. Based on that, you will do the security assessment, like security maturity assessment, to identify what controls they have and what they need to implement. And from there we get a visibility about the gaps, merge those gaps, part of a security program. If any controls is required, then it need to go through a budgetary approval. So we submit the business case, which talk about why we need, but make sure business case can only approve if it include your risk analysis data. Your information security program is only approved if it's aligned with your risk analysis data, because risk analysis is the most important element we have, which is required for your information security program to be approved. Okay, so this is all from my side, and thank you for watching this video. And if you find this video useful, do share in network. And second most important thing is that do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos. Good day. Bye.